Welcome, everybody. My name is Dilip Barman. I'm one of the cooks in the kitchen. We're a group of a few dozen Food for Life instructors. We are with the Physicians Committee, and we put on monthly shows that are plant-based shows. And every other month, we have a show with our kids called So Many Kids in the Kitchen. And today, I'm excited because we have two guests. We have Genesis Butler, who's a 14-year-old environmental and vegan activist. She is actually going to be our guest in January. She's going to be our guest, I think it's January 16th, and we're going to dedicate an hour to talking with Genesis. And I'm going to introduce you to her for a second. She just stopped by for a moment to say hi and tell us a little bit about what's going to happen in January. So Genesis is a 14-year-old environmental and vegan activist, as I mentioned. She's one of the youngest ones to do a TED Talk. When she was 10 years old, she gave a talk about what we need to do to help protect the environment. And Genesis, I was very, very excited to hear that your great uncle was the great Cesar Chavez, who was an amazing activist for the rights of farm workers. So Genesis, welcome to our show. I know you're just here for a minute, but can you share with us a little bit about what we can expect in January? Okay, Genesis says her Wi-Fi is glitching. Let's give her a second.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Am I glitchy or it's fine?
We can hear you.
Is it still glitching? Because everyone's frozen for me.
Yeah, just speak. We can hear you.
Okay. So my name is Genesis Butler, and I'm 14 years old. Talking about how easy it is to be plant-based and to switch to a vegan diet, because I've been vegan for almost my whole life now, and my siblings have been vegan since birth, and it's the easiest thing that we could have done. So we love being vegan, and we think it's so easy and it's so good for us, and the food's really good. And I'm a vegan environmentalist activist, so I talk about the environment and how veganism is aligned with that, and with the animals and all the things that veganism has to do with that. And I'm really excited to be on the show. I think this is a really amazing show. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Genesis. You're in California? Are you in Southern California, Genesis? I think there's a technical detail, a difficulty. But yeah, welcome, Genesis. We look forward to seeing you in January. Thanks for being with us just for a moment, and we'll see you next month. Happy New Year, Genesis. All right, so let's get back to today's show. We have another guest today, and I'll be introducing her a little later. Many of you know Brenda Davis. She's one of my favorite nutritionists, and more about her after we get to the stars of the show. Brenda is a star in my eyes, but the kids are also big stars in my eyes. So today we have in store for you our own kids. We have 5 children, and Ella is going to introduce the show, but I did want to say that we've been doing this show with the kids for, I think this is our 5th show, and I know they're all very excited. So with that, I'm going to pass the torch on to Ella in Providence, Rhode Island, to tell you about the show and to kick off the show. So Ella, take it away.
Thank you, Dilip. Hey, everybody. So like Dilip said, my name is Ella Rodriguez. I am a Food for Life instructor, just like Dilip and Cody. And our kids are very excited to come every month or every other month or so to show you guys different recipes and how eating a whole food plant-based diet, it's really yummy. It can be really yummy, and it's very nutritious and can keep the kids nice and healthy. So today the kids are going to make holiday desserts for you, their favorite desserts that they like to eat, on special occasions. So Mia's going to get started, and take it away, Mia. Have fun, everybody, and thank you for coming.
All right, my name is Mia, and I'm going to make a blueberry blueberry pie. Let's get started. So the first thing that you're going to need for your blueberry pie, you're going to try to measure 5 cups of blueberries, and it can be big or small or both. I just used big today, and they're ready to go. Next, you'll need your cornstarch or tapioca. You can sprinkle it on. Make sure you have a spoon to mix it a little bit. Then you're going to want to have a half a cup of maple syrup, and I don't know if I forgot this, but a half a cup of the cornstarch too. All right. Next, you're going to really mix that because the maple syrup usually drops down to the bottom, so that means that you really want to scrape it from the top or really get those blueberries in there. And when you know you're done mixing, it's like when the blueberries are all glazed with maple syrup. All right, that looks good enough to me. Next, I'm just going to take my pie crust that I have ready, and I'm going to scoop it into this. Here. You might see that some of the maple syrup is starting to drop down once you start adding it. So if you want to give it a quick stir, that's okay. And you can, I'm pretty sure you can put other like fruits in here, but then it wouldn't be just blueberry pie anymore. But I'm imagining strawberries, that would be really good. And you can add some raspberries too. All right, so I'm just gonna finish up. The bowl may be a little bit heavy if you got a big bowl, so you might need help with that part. Then when all of your blueberries are in there, you're going to take the other crust and just flap it over. Then you can press down a little bit. And you want to really just get the edges kind of press down on the edge. And you can do like little patterns if you like. And that is good. Then one last thing. You need to take a butter knife and make some little cuts. When you're done making some little cuts, you can put it in the oven. And then your done product would look like this. Or a little bit neater. This was kind of my first time making blueberry pie yesterday, so. Next, we're going to pass it on to Max. He's going to be making some chocolate cupcakes. They're really good, by the way. Bye. Hi, my name is Max. Like she said, and today I'm going to be making chocolate cupcakes. So, first thing we're going to need to do. So for chocolate cupcakes, you have to separate the liquids and the solids. So here are the solids that we have. We like to do the solids first. So to do that, we are going to take some flour. We're using gluten-free flour. So we're going to put it into the bowl. Whole wheat flour is the best to use. Next, we're going to take some cocoa powder and put it in as well. Then we're going to take some salt. We're going to take a quarter of salt, just to sprinkle the salt and put it in. And also we're going to put 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now I'm going to mix it up. Okay. Now we're going to do the liquids. The liquids go in a smaller bowl. So, first liquid is some some coconut milk. Oh, some coconut milk. So you're going to add that to your bowl. Next, we're going to have some maple syrup. Just going to add that as well. Okay. Then we're going to take some apple cider vinegar and put it in as well. Last but not least, we're going to take our vanilla extract and add it. Now we're going to take our mixer and mix it all up. After this, you're going to add the liquids to the solids, not the solids to liquids, the liquids to solids. So you add the liquids to the solids. And then after you do that, we're gonna mix it together. Don't over mix it, just mix it the right amount. Like mix it until it's like a good texture. So you don't want to over mix it because it's gonna not taste as well. So you want it to stay very well mixed, but not over mixed. Not too not mixed, but not too much mixed. And for me in the corners, there's a lot of stuff being stuck. So right about here, you're gonna need that texture. When you pick it up, it goes like drip, drip, drip. So then we're going to move it over now. Cupcakes are gonna come in. Now this is where the cupcakes come. Silicone comes. So first we're going to take a spoon and we're going to scoop it up and put it into one of the cupcakes. So we take the cupcakes to it and then we put the cupcakes under it and strip one, like a half and a bit more of a half. Like 2/3. And And I'm going to do that one more time so you guys can see. Two-thirds. And now, you guys get the idea, right? So I'm going to keep on doing that, but not in front of you. This is how the finished product looks. I hope you enjoy it. Bye. Now we're going to go to Anil in North Carolina. Bye.
Hi, my name is Anu, and today I'm going to make apple cobbler, or as I like to call it, apple cobble. I call it apple cobble because cobble rhymes with gobble, and when you try this recipe, you're going to gobble it up. So first I'm going to talk about this recipe. I came up with it a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, when I was trying to make apple cobbler because it was around Thanksgiving and I felt like having apple pie. So I came up with this recipe and it's I really like it. So for the recipe, you need oats, apples, cinnamon, maple syrup, and raisins. So to start with, you need your cup measurer. And I'm only making 1 serving. So for 1 serving, you need 1 cup of oats. And be careful when pouring it, because that could happen. So make sure it's 1 cup and you don't overfill, because otherwise you might have a mess to clean up. So here are your oats, which will be the base, like the crust kind of. And we don't need this anymore because we have our oats. So I'm just going to give this to my mom. And now I am going to put the oats in this pan. So that's 1 cup of oats in the pan. And oats are really good for you because they have minerals and they have a lot of fiber. So they're a great way to begin your day because they give you a lot of fiber and it's a great healthy start to your day. So oats are a good choice for breakfast. And in this case, dessert too. So just going to start the flame because I'm going to toast the oats. And while you're toasting your oats, you want to stir it occasionally. But yeah, and in the meantime, while it is cooking, I am going to make applesauce, remembering to stir the oats occasionally. So if you don't want to make applesauce, you can certainly buy it from the store, but making it from home, I think tastes better, and it's fresher, and it has skin from the apples. So it also looks nicer because there's like some applesauce and then little colors of skin. So I cut 2 apples. This is 2 apples. I cut them into kind of small pieces so that the blender could blend them better. Oops. So that it doesn't take as long to blend. But I just want to show you something. When cutting your apple, you might think that you cut the apple like this, then leave the core. But when you're making applesauce, you don't do that. So I've just cut the core in half like that so you can see the star in the middle. And so all you want to do is take the seeds out. This is not necessary, but I like to do it because I don't like seeds. I mean, you probably wouldn't notice them because they would be blended, but I like not to have seeds. You can keep the seeds if you want. So just take your seeds out like this. Oops, okay, that's too bad. So all you want to do is just cut, see the stem there? You don't want the stem in your applesauce. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to, you could have it, but no, I don't want to. And be very careful when you're cutting. So that's basically all the apple we have to waste. And then this just goes with the other apples. And if you want to, you can optionally take out the end part. This, where the flower used to be. But you can take all the apple around it too. So basically that's all that's wasted from one apple. Okay, so I am going to move this cutting board so it's out of my way. And now I am going to use this blender here. I'm going to put all my apples in. Be careful that you don't spill. Oh, actually, before I do that, I should stir my oats. Just stir them occasionally, and I'm going to lower the heat a bit more. And now, I'm going to finish putting the apples in. Okay, so there are my apples, and you can add cinnamon. If you don't like cinnamon, like my mom, you can exclude the cinnamon. And if you like cinnamon a lot, like me, you can put a lot of cinnamon. Okay, that should be good. Yeah. So then you blend it. And when you make applesauce, you need this pusher thingy to push the apples into the blade. Yeah, apples are really good for you. They have fiber, but not as much as oats, but it's still a lot of fiber in the in this outside part, the skin. Yes, the skin. Oh, and I should stir my oats because they're sizzling. And they have potassium, which is good for your energy. Okay, and I actually think my oats are done, so I'm going to turn the heat off. And apples also have vitamin C, which is good. Okay, so now I'm going to blend this to make my applesauce. And that looks really good. Again, if you don't want to make your own applesauce, you can buy it from the store. So now that that's done, I'm going to transfer my oats into this bowl. Remember not to touch the pan after it's hot, because you could burn yourself. Okay, so now I have my oats in here. See, they got a bit charred. You don't want to cook it that much, but that's okay. Now you want to add 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And I got these really nice tablespoon measures from my birthday, from my fellow kids in the kitchen. So these are really nice. I really like them. So I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And be very careful when pouring maple syrup, because when it gets out of control, I like to call it a maple syrup disaster. So if you put too much maple syrup, it gets way too sweet and it's not good. So for every cup of oats, you want 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. And just mix it around like that. make sure all the oats have a little bit of maple syrup coated onto them. And then I'm just going to put this in there so that maple syrup doesn't get on the table. So just stir it around. Like so. And then add raisins. You don't have to add raisins, but I think it adds a really nice touch to it. So just stir it around like that. And this is supposed to make one serving, but it's a very large serving. So you might not need this much. Okay, so now I'm going to get my bowl. See, it's a very easy recipe. It's very healthy too. Well, yeah, not very healthy, but it's pretty healthy. The maple syrup kind of takes away from the health a little bit, but that's fine. Because it's, after all, it's a dessert, right? So I'm going to save this much for my dad. I'm very stingy. So now I'm just going to compress the oats down so that they're more like crust. This bowl is very slippery, so it's hard to do that, but that's okay. Okay, and now it wouldn't be apple cobble without the apple. So I'm just going to take this top and I'll lay it aside. I'll put it on my cutting board so that the apple doesn't get on the table. And now I'm just going to pour my applesauce on top of my cobble. And you will probably have extra applesauce, which is good. So you probably only need one apple, but this can be saved for later enjoyment. And now, see how beautiful that looks with the little specks of skin on it? Just smooth the applesauce out. You can make applesauce with any kind of apples, but right now in this season, one of my favorite kinds of apples are honeybee, and they taste really good. But you can use, I used honeybee for this, but you can use any type you want. And for a finishing touch, I'm going to add some more cinnamon. Cinnamon is really good for you, so don't hesitate to add more cinnamon. And if you want, you can add some apple pieces on top and some nuts or coconut or something like that, or more raisins, or you can choose your topping. You can get creative. But yeah, that is apple cobble, and it tastes really good. I'm actually going to try it now. So good. I much prefer this with homemade applesauce than store-bought. And actually, if you want, the way I toasted my oats is good, even a bit charred, because it makes them more hard, which is more crust-like, and it tastes really good. So good. Mmm. Now that I'm done chewing, I'd like to say thank you for watching how I make my apple cobble. And I'd like to pass it on to Ava and Ella in Omaha, Nebraska.
Thanks, Anu. That looks really good. We'll have to try it sometime. Me and Ella are from Omaha, Nebraska. Today I'll be making fudgy no-bake brownies. First, you want to put a cup of walnuts and 1 1/3 cup of dates in the food processor. You want to blend it up until it's finely ground. Could use a little bit more. All right, looks pretty good. Then you want to add the almond butter. Put that in here. Kind of scrape down the sides a little bit. I think it needs just a little bit more. And then you add the cocoa powder. This is about a half cup. Pulse it and make sure it's all mixed up. Use just a little bit more. Okay, looks good. Then you need a baking pan. These aren't baked, but you want a pan to put them in. You can line it with parchment paper if you want. I just didn't do that today. Take out the food processor blade. And then put the brownie batter in the pan. It comes out of the food processor pretty well. And then you want to roll your sleeve up and kind of squish it down. Make sure it gets spread out all the way around the pan. Squish it out. And then put it all down. You can use a spoon to do the top too, if you don't want to get your hands dirty. And if you want it to be really nice and flat. And then you can use about a third cup of pecans, kind of broken a little bit to top it with. And then you can use any other kind of nut that you want to use to top this with. All right, this is what it looks like when it's done, and then you put it in the fridge for an hour before you eat it. All right, now Ella is going to make her double chocolate mint cookies. So first you need 1.5 cup of oat flour. 3 tablespoons of date sugar. And 1.5 teaspoon of baking soda.
1/2.
And then you need 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. 1.5 teaspoon of salt. And then you just kind of want to mix your dry ingredients together. And then you want to put in
First.
1/2 cup of cooked chickpeas. One 1/4 cup of almond butter. One teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. 2 teaspoons of peppermint extract. And then you kind of want to stir down the edges a little.
Mix.
And then you want to And then you want to mix your dry ingredients with your wet ingredients. And then you kind of want to stir down the edges a little bit more. I think it could get mixed a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully, and what I do is unplug this first before everyone put your hands in here. I'm going to take out the sharp blade, and then Ella has one more ingredient to put in there.
1/3 cup of mini chocolate chips or vegan chocolate chips.
Nope, not that we got this. Why do we want to mix it by hand versus the blender?
Because then the chocolate chips could get crushed.
Yep. You got it in my little hand.
I think I got it.
Looks good.
And you can get just any spoon, but I like to use this ice cream scooper. I think it works really well.
You can smell the chocolate. Those make the perfect size, don't they?
Yeah.
And do one more? Yeah. So you can use an ice cream scooper besides ice cream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now what do we need to do?
And then you need to use your fingers just to push it down a little bit.
Mhm.
And then you just put them in the oven and cook it.
What's the temperature, Ella, that we put?
350 degrees
For how long, honey?
for 14 to 16 minutes until the edges begin to look dry. And here's how they look when they're finished.
Yum.
All right. Now let's join our parents for a Q&A session with Miss Brenda Davis.
Okay, wonderful. Big round of applause for all the kids. I thought all the dishes were great. And everybody who's watching, in a few minutes, we're going to put them all on camera for Q&A. But before we do that, I'm really excited today that we have a special guest who's joining us, and that's Brenda Davis. So Brenda, welcome to our show. Brenda is somebody who doesn't really require much of an introduction. She's one of my very favorite nutritionists, and Brenda, I think we go back, we've been friends for, it feels like 15 years, maybe 20, no more than that, I think it's 20 years.
It sure is, because it was probably about the year 2000 or so, I would say, that we first met. So.
I've loved knowing you for all these years. Brenda has written, I think, about a dozen books, and there's something like 1 million copies in print now. Brenda was the past, she was involved with writing some of the nutrition guidelines for Canada. And she has a brand new book, which I'm really excited about, called Nourish. And she wrote it with a pediatrician. So they teamed up, and it just came out a few weeks ago. And we are, during the Q&A, going to be giving away 2 copies of Nourish. We could spend an hour, actually we could spend 10 hours just focused on Brenda. And we are going to do that in in March for the Great American Meetup, which is a day we encourage people to try not eating meat for the day. So we're going to have Brenda back on. But Brenda was kind enough to say she wanted to stop by. We're going to take 3-4 minutes right now. She's going to share a little bit about her new book. And then we're going to bring the focus back to the kids and questions for the kids. So Brenda, tell us about your new book.
Well, the new book is called Nourish. Here it is. You know what? Before I talk about that, Dilip, I just want to say thank you to you and to all the Food for Life instructors and to the wonderful children for the service that you're providing the world. It's just a wonderful inspiration to me. And I'm not sure as parents that we can really give our children any greater gift than to be proficient in the kitchen, eating healthy foods. It's something that they'll benefit from for their whole entire lives. So what you guys are doing is amazing. Thank you for that.
Thanks so much, Brenda.
And so here's the new book. And I, as you mentioned, I wrote this with a pediatrician in San Francisco. Her name is Reshma Shah. And our goal really was to fill a bit of a void in the literature. There wasn't very many books about nutrition, plant-based nutrition for families. And we wanted to speak to all the plant exclusive eaters like we are, Dilip, but we also wanted to speak to people that are, plant curious or just, approaching the path and who are plant predominant or whatever, to encourage them to take further steps along that path, and how to do so in a way that really supports optimal health and growth and development in their children. And so it's quite a comprehensive resource, and we're really proud of it. So if you have a family, this is really a wonderful plant-based resource for you. So yeah, and Nourish is actually divided into 4 sections, and I love this because we start out with something called consideration, and it's all about health, home, and heart. And home is about the planet we live on, and heart is about our concern for the well-being of other living creatures. So it's all about animal welfare. And then we go into care, which is about how to achieve optimal nutrition. We talk about the macronutrients and the micronutrients, and how to create a healthy food, food plan with a food guide and all of that. And then we go through the stages of the life cycle, so pregnancy and lactation and infancy and childhood and adolescence and all of those things. And then the third part is about parents and confidence in raising healthy children. And we talk about feeding principles and the value of the family meal, and why it's so important to our children's health. And we talk about underweight and overweight and eating disorders, and raising a vegetarian or veg-leaning family. And then the fourth part is called connection. And so it's about learning to shop and prepare and plan meals. It's got menus and all sorts of recipes, and that's that's the book. So anyway, I always thought that I would write a dozen books, and this is number 12, and I've already agreed to another one. So I'm not sure how many it'll end up being.
Well, all your books are great. I love recommending your books to my students and my friends, and they're always so well written, so beautifully illustrated. We're just so lucky to have you. And those of you who are fortunate enough to ever get a chance to hear Brenda, as good a writer as you are, Brenda, I've never said this to you. Let's say you're a 99 on a scale of 100 as a writer. You're 110 as a speaker.
Oh.
You are just phenomenal. Whatever field you're in, whether it's nutrition or if you're in, I teach math, for example, you're a mathematician, whatever you are, when you're at the top of your game, which Brenda is, a lot of times people at the mic kind of are a little bit unkind and a little bit snobbish, and you're anything but. You are extremely approachable. You have the best information, and you are so loving and kind in sharing it.
Well, thank you for that, Dilip. My theory in life is there is not any single person in this world I couldn't learn something from. And I learned something from all of the children today. I've learned lots from you. There's so many things I'm not very good at that you're amazing at. And so when we all come together and share our skills, it's really quite wonderful. But thank you so much for those very kind words.
Thanks so much, Brenda. And speaking of the others, let's bring them all in. So let's bring in Ava and Ella from Omaha, Nebraska, and Mia and Max from Providence, Rhode Island. And of course, Anu sitting next to me eating her apple cobble here in North Carolina. And we're going to open for questions. I know a couple of questions have come in. I'm going to start with a few, and then the way I thought we would handle the book giveaway, so Brenda's going to give away 2 copies of her book, is I already have noted a few people have asked questions. So if you ask a question, we're going to say your name, and Big Ella, me and Max's mom, is going to write your name down. And so please ask questions. And if we have 2 people asking questions, then each of you wins the book. If we get 20 people asking questions, then we'll play a game. Did I mention I teach math? We'll come up with a math game and we'll pick one of the 2. And by the way, my fellow conspirators are also teachers. So Ella is a teacher of physical education, and Ava and Ella's mom, Cody, is a teacher of nurses. Wow. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions, and then we're going to go to the live audience. And again, please come with some nice questions so that you might qualify for the book. So just going around in the order we went, Mia, there was a question. Did you make your own pie shell?
No, we didn't. We bought it from the store, but you could make your own pie crust if you have a recipe. We don't, so we just bought one.
Okay. And if you, when you buy it, is there anything special you look for? It's easy to find vegan pie shells, right?
Sometimes, usually we look for gluten-free because we have gluten allergies, but sometimes we don't find gluten-free. We also try to find, I think, if it has, like, we want to make sure there's no eggs or milk in it.
Excellent. And just for the benefit of our audience, there are a significant number of people who are gluten-free. In Physicians Committee, we take the position that gluten is a healthful food, whole grain products. But of course, not just, I mean, there are some people who have celiac disease. It's a small percentage, and Brenda later will be more exact. I think it's like 3% or something like that, she knows. So if you have celiacs or you're gluten intolerant, obviously stay away from gluten, obviously. And one other thing I wanted to say at the get-go is we love sharing evidence-based information, but don't make any dietary changes without talking to a healthcare professional. We can't and we don't give one-on-one advice. We believe that eating whole food plant-based is good for you, and we have a lot of evidence for that, but talk to your healthcare provider. Max, a question for you. Coconut milk is what you use. Are there other possibilities? Some people, sometimes when I take too much coconut milk, my stomach gets upset. So if I were to make your recipe, are there other milks you can use besides coconut milk?
I mean, maybe you could use like almond milk or something.
Okay. And Ella, please write down Dave Palmieri's name. Dave has asked a question. Sorry, it's Ari. So the email, the name on Facebook is Dave Palmieri, but it's Ari. So Ari is asking, can I replace maple syrup with anything else for the cupcakes? If he doesn't like maple syrup, is there another sweetener you guys can use?
You can use dates because dates is a really good sweetener. There's a smoothie that I make in the morning for like breakfast. No, that my mom makes for me in the morning, and she doesn't add maple syrup. She adds dates, and now dates are my favorite fruit. Wait, it's a fruit.
Excellent. We'll have, in a few minutes, we'll have a conversation. I'm going to actually ask Brenda to lead us on that. We can take advantage of her being here in terms of sweetness. So dates are very sweet. They also have fiber, and they're a really good choice for sweetening things. And I actually have some questions exactly about that for you, Brenda, in a few minutes. Thanks, Max. Moving to our next speaker, which is Anu. Let me highlight us. So here we are. So Anu, a couple of questions came in for you. So Helene Ann, let's write Helene's name down, Ella, please. Helene Ann asked, what kind of apple did you use? And my question for you is, what's your inspiration? Because I cook the way you do, is I like to make things up. And I think you made this up. So what kind of apple and what's your inspiration?
Well, I actually didn't use, honeybee is not an apple, it's sugar bee. Yeah, so I used honeybee apple, but you can use any apple. I used honeybee sugar bee because it's my favorite. Yeah. And the other question was, how did I come up with it? Well, as I said, I wanted to make some apple cobbler because it was cold and I felt like having it. So then I kind of created the recipe because I knew I had to have a crust, but we didn't have pie crust. So I was like, apple cobbler has like sometimes a crust made out of oats. So I decided if I toasted the oats and added some maple syrup, it might turn out like a granola-y thingy. So that could be my base. So that's what I did. And then since I thought the top was kind of softer and cooked apples, I didn't want to bake my apples, so I just added applesauce.
Great. We buy as much as possible organic. And so sugar bee came out a couple years ago and it wasn't organic, so we didn't buy it. And now I'm buying a lot of it. That's all I'm buying. I know a question came in about, could you, are sugar bee apples crisp? They're very crisp. So somebody asked about Honey Crisp, which is one of our favorites as well. So as vegans, we don't eat honey, but we love Honey Crisp apples, right? So it's called Honey Crisp because it kind of tastes like honey. And so the good news about the sugar bee apple is its parentage includes Honey Crisp. So it's a cross with Honey Crisp and other kinds of apples. It's wonderful. It's like when you're eating it, it's like you're eating sugar water, isn't it? It's like just drips and it's amazing. And I love how you made the applesauce from scratch. You can buy it, but you can make it.
Oh, can I say something?
Sure.
If you're not going to use applesauce right away, when you make it, then you can add lime juice because it stops it from oxidizing.
Right. So oxidizing isn't really a problem, but it's aesthetically could be a problem. If you don't want to serve something which is brown, I mean, apples are light brown, but if you want to stop them from browning more, she's galloping down the, the dish right now. And when we're done, I'm going to be having a batch as well. But if it's going to sit for any time, it oxidizes. So add some acid like lime juice or lemon juice. Ava and Ella, there were a couple questions for you. Ava, I'll just ask them, and then there was a question for Ava. Can you add some leavening to cause the brownies to rise and getting it to be a little more airy? And maybe your mom can help with that. And Ella, how do you get your consistency of the cupcakes so perfect? I was watching you kind of ladle it out and it was like perfect. And sorry?
They're cookies.
Sorry, the cookies. So those are the two questions for you guys. Anything to add to the brownies to lighten them, and how do you get your cookies so perfect?
Actually, this type of brownies aren't really cake-like. They're more of a fudgy brownie. I've never really tried lining them with anything. We do have another brownie recipe that's more cake-like.
Yeah, so this is more of a fudge type brownie. This is a no bake, so it wouldn't rise at all. It basically just kind of gets cold and firmed up in the fridge, and then you slice it up and you eat it, and they're just delicious and easy to make. And then let's see, how do you make yours as far as the shape, right?
Yeah, you just kind of like smush it down with your fingers, or you can use a spoon if you want.
And if you put a little water on your fingers before you squish them down, it keeps it from sticking to your fingers. It helps a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Great. There's lots of questions coming in. I wanted to mention in terms of putting liquid on your fingers, one thing we may have forgotten to mention is all the kids before they cook wash their hands carefully. Especially when you're cooking for other people, hygiene is really, really important. So working with kids, I work in the schools. I'm the nutrition education director at a school. And that's the first thing we do is before we do anything with food, we wash our hands with soap. It's especially important now with COVID-19 to learn good hygiene. If you're cooking for yourself and you choose to lick your finger and put it back in, that's your business. But if you're cooking for others, in my classes, that's a very strict rule. Be very, very clean, just like these kids are. I'm going to throw out a couple questions, but I wanted to start actually with a more general question for Brenda. I'm going to ask Brenda to talk more about sweetness and how we satisfy the craving without using refined sugars and why not use refined sugars. But before we do that, I'm just going to throw a couple other questions out. Paula Proctor, and we're writing names down of people who are asking questions so we can give the book away. Paula Proctor, how do you make sure that everyone in your family gets enough protein and vitamins needed eating only plants? Where do you get your protein? The children are delightful. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you. Normally, Ella, Cody, and I answered these questions, but as I said, we know a fair amount about nutrition, but Brenda, you're more articulate than we are, I think, at least than I am. So I'm going to ask you to answer that in a moment, but let me just throw a few more out. Helene Ann said, adding walnuts to the oats gives another level of deliciousness. Walnuts are good sources of omega-3s. Just be careful of the fat in them. And we can talk about fat if we have time a little bit later. And there was a comment from Kathy Sabo. I think I learned from Anu something that never occurred to me. The flower on the apple tree is seen inside the apple. Never thought about this, but totally makes sense. And now I will look at apples so differently from now on. The preschool you went to, they actually did that. They would cut the apples. Remember that? They'd cut it and you'd see the flower inside. And Helene Ann, where do you find sugar bee apples locally? Weaver Street Market. And I'll tell you a fun story. If you're here local, so Helene Ann is a good friend of mine. She lives nearby. We have a wonderful co-op called Weaver Street Market. And they've been selling it for some weeks now. And I bought like 20 pounds of it. I gave a whole bunch to my neighbors. And then I went to Whole Foods for a quick shopping. And they had a couple dollars a pound cheaper, but I like supporting co-ops. So we got that at the co-op. But let's first turn to Brenda. And Brenda, can you answer in general, where do you get your protein? And aren't we at risk when we choose not to eat animal foods? And where do we get our vitamins? And also talk a little bit about sweetness. Where do we satisfy our cravings, and why not refined sugars?
Sure. So let's start with the protein and the nutrients questions. So, you know, where do we get our protein is a kind of an interesting question, because in our culture, we're kind of conditioned to believe that meat and animal foods are the key sources of protein. And what a lot of people don't realize is that all whole foods contain protein, and they actually contain a really healthy amount of protein. The most concentrated plant sources are things like legumes. So that means beans and lentils and chickpeas and split peas and all of these kinds of foods. Of course, tofu and tempeh are made from beans, so they're also very good sources of protein. But seeds are also quite concentrated, like hemp seeds and pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. The nuts have protein, and even grains. So oats have about 17% of their calories from protein. And so what we need is about 10 to 15% of our calories from protein. If you eat a mix of all of the plant foods and you get enough calories, your protein needs are really not a huge deal. What a lot of people don't know is that proteins are made up of amino acids. These are the building blocks of protein. And all of those amino acids, every single one that is essential to human health that we can't make in our own bodies, is actually made by plants. So it makes no sense to think you can't get these from plants. It's where they come from. And in fact, I think the most exciting part of this whole story is that the studies that look at people who get their protein from plants versus people that get most of their protein from animal products, the people getting their protein from plants have far less lower rates of mortality, less heart disease, less cancer, less diabetes. So there are and less kidney disease as well. So there are really big advantages to getting our protein from plants rather than animals. And that doesn't say anything about the advantages for the planet, because you know, there are way fewer carbon greenhouse gas emissions from getting our protein from plants than there are from animals. And then, of course, if we're not getting our protein from animals, we don't have to kill animals to eat them. And so that's a huge bonus in my view as well. And then other vitamins and minerals, well, plants tend to have a wonderful complement of vitamins and minerals. The only nutrients that you're not going to get enough of from plants are vitamin B12, because vitamin B12 is something made by tiny little microorganisms that are B12 producing bacteria. And certainly if you were eating very dirty foods, it would be possible to get B12 from them. But generally, plant foods aren't a reliable source. And so we need to have fortified foods or a supplement for B12. Otherwise, most of the nutrients can be amply provided. Vitamin D is a nutrient that everyone has to worry about, not just plant-based eaters, but omnivores as well. And if we don't get enough warm sunshine, we live in a cold place like I do, then we need to either eat fortified foods or take a vitamin D supplement, especially in the winter time. So that, you know, kind of in a nutshell covers some of those nutrition concerns. Then getting on to the question about sugars. Well, you know, one of the things that I find very interesting is that if you think about in nature how sugar is provided in nature, it's very, very dilutely concentrated in plants. So we find some sugars in vegetables, we find some sugars in fruits. And of course, fruits are the most concentrated natural places where we get sweetness. And our appetite control centers and our, you know, our sort of are being drawn to foods in nature. We're drawn to things that have sweetness and saltiness and fat and all of that to help us survive, get enough calories and all of those things. But these flavors in nature are so dilute that if we eat whole plant foods, we're not going to be overdoing those things. Whereas if we take those flavors like sugar, for example, and extract them from foods and concentrate them, it overwhelms our appetite control centers and we can't stop eating them. We end up eating way too much. And so in our culture, we infuse foods with sugar. So the beverages people are drinking, half the sugar people eat come from these really sweet beverages. And when you drink calories, it doesn't even register like you've eaten anything. And so that's a big problem for people. And then, you eat all of these, very, very sweet foods that are just laden with different sugars. It can contribute to overweight and obesity and diabetes and heart disease. And in fact, what is really interesting is the American Heart Association recommends that children under the age of 2 don't get any added sugars in their diet at all. And that children over 2, right through the teenage years, don't get more than 6 teaspoons a day. And people would say, wow, 6 teaspoons, that's a lot of sugar. But you know what? That's about a half a cup of soda. It's about a half a cup of a sweetened yogurt, whether it's plant-based or animal-based or, dairy-based. If it's fruit, if it's, a sweetened yogurt. One cinnamon bun is, 12 teaspoons of sugar. So those numbers add up really quickly. So the kids in the kitchen that are, the cooks in the kitchen that are doing these recipes with just a little bit of maple syrup or with dates or with natural sweeteners, they're at such an advantage. You're keeping that sugar intake low, and that's so important. At the very least, we want to meet those, be under those maximum limits that are set by the American Heart Association. So when you look at different sugars, were you going to ask about different sugars, Dilip? So
yeah.
When you look at different sugars, the best sugar anybody can eat is sugar from fruit. So, and if you're wanting to use something concentrated in a dessert, it would be dates or dried prunes or raisins, or I dehydrate pears in the summertime, so dried pears or any of the dried fruits. And why those are better than any other kind of sugar is because they have fiber, they have minerals and vitamins, and they come packaged with all of these things that help to protect your body. Whereas if you use sugar like white sugar or brown sugar, those have very few nutrients at all, and there's no fiber. And so it's just not really a healthy choice. And it's not, the tiniest little bits of maple syrup in something that's a problem. And in fact, maple syrup actually has calcium and it has magnesium and it has some of these nutrients. You would be surprised to look at the numbers because it's a very natural sugar. And the other sugar that has a lot of nutrients is blackstrap molasses. You always want organic if you're doing blackstrap molasses, but it has a lot of calcium and iron. And that's one of the few sugars that's really loaded. So if you're making gingerbread cookies for Christmas, for example, the blackstrap molasses is actually a really good choice. And I would say those are the two preferable sugars if you're using a little bit of sugar in something. The other one would be date sugar. And it's, dehydrated dates that are just ground up. And that's absolutely a reasonable choice as well. And those were the sugars that were featured in the recipes today. So you guys did so well.
Thanks so much, Brenda. There's so much to talk about. We will, in March, have a whole hour with you amplifying on what you've already shared and much more. But Cody, I thought we'd move to you. Did you see, I know there's a lot of questions on Facebook. Can you pose a couple of them?
I don't have access to Facebook right now, Dilip.
Okay. Ella, do you see some of the questions coming in on Facebook?
Yes, so I see a lot of questions for Brenda, and there is a question for little Ella, so I'm going to go to her for just 1 second. Somebody's asking, what are her favorite vegan chocolate chips? I know that we use different kind of brands, so if little Ella would like to tell us that.
So they're just mini vegan chocolate chips.
Okay. Do you have, yes, Dilip, if you can showcase her so we can see it better. That'd be great.
Yeah, you are spotlit.
No, Ella.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Little Ella, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Enjoy Life brand.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, this is the one that we normally use, but there's other brands out there. You know, sometimes right now things can be a little bit limited, but this is the ones we have, and they've been really good. They work great. They melt up in the microwave good for like our dates, where we just dip whole dates that have been pitted, and we'll put a couple nuts in there, and then we'll melt the chocolate and dip it in there and put them in the fridge, and they get the chocolate hardens on the outside, and they taste just, you know, better than candy bars because they're a little healthy for you, right? And this does have a little sugar. It has cane sugar and unsweetened chocolate and cocoa butter is what it has in it. So these are good brands, aren't they, Ella?
Yeah.
One thing we do is we watch for chocolate that is fair trade, because a lot of children are involved with hard work in chocolate fields, and so for us it's important to buy chocolate that is certified fair trade. Big Ella, do you see more questions? There's a bunch of questions.
Yeah, there's so a couple of people are asking about newborns. If a mother cannot nurse, what would be the best alternative? And then in terms of parenting, parents are also asking about iron, calcium, and vitamin D. So if Brenda, if you can talk about that, that'd be great.
Sure.
And the questions are coming in from, let's make sure we got them for the book draw. So Eileen, sorry, it's Danielle Sickney and Erin Anjuris and Kathy Sabo are asking those questions. So we're going to write your names down, and in about 5 minutes, we're going to draw for the books.
Okay, the first question is about what would you feed a newborn if you can't breastfeed? And of course, I think most people are aware that the milk of each species is so well designed for the offspring of that species that there is no other milk that does what human breast milk does for human infants. And so if you can't breastfeed, if there's any chance you can get human breast milk from a breast milk bank or something like that, that would be your number one choice. Your number two choice would be a commercial infant formula. And I'm saying that if you look at the ingredients in commercial infant formula, it's not very appealing. It's kind of like Boost or Ensure or something like that with all the nutrients added that babies need. But I need to make this point really strongly because it is the only alternative you should use to breast milk. And the reason being that homemade formulas are so often linked to disasters with infant feeding. And so we've seen children with failure to thrive and even children who have died from being fed homemade formula. So please don't do that. Commercial infant formula, the one that you would choose. So the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests that vegan infants, so if you're a plant-based family, you can't breastfeed, you have no access to human milk, then you would choose a soy-based infant formula. Some other babies with different metabolism defects may need soy formula as well. But the American Academy of Pediatrics for non-vegan families would recommend a cow's milk based formula as opposed to other formulas. So those are the two main formulas, are soy based and cow's milk based. And of course, if you're vegan, you're going to want to choose the soy based.
There's a couple of questions that are coming in, but before asking the remaining questions, Ella, let's give away the first of the books. So what names have you written down of people who've asked questions so far?
All right, so I have Dave, and I apologize in advance if I don't say your names correctly, everybody. Dave Palmari, Pauline Ann, Erin Chase, Helen Ann, Paula Proctor, Danielle Sikini, and Kathy Sabos.
Okay, so my suggestion is let's have Max close his eyes, and can you put his finger on the list and move it back and forth, and we'll see which one it stops on.
Just go like this, and then put your hand on something. And stop. All right.
Okay, so who's the winner of the first book?
Helen Ann.
Helene Ann, she's a friend of mine. I can get you Helene's contact. So Helene, congratulations, you won Brenda's book. So in a minute, we'll give away the second one. I had a question, first a comment. I have a question for my daughter. And by the way, at the very end, we're going to have each of the kids has a question for Miss Brenda. So that's how we'll end the show in a couple of minutes. But Eileen Granite Anu has a question for you. I never knew I could make, and let's make sure we have Eileen's name in the contest for the second book. I never knew I could make applesauce so easily in my Vitamix. Thank you. Can you do a show on other things to make in my blender, such as oat flour? And I'll answer that so this is a show every other month for kids in the kitchen. So Cody, Ella, myself, and 24 others, we're cooks in the kitchen. And every month we do a show. And we know something about nutrition. We know something about preparing food. And we have a list that's super, super long, essentially an infinite list of things we can present. And we'll add this to the list. It's a great idea. Our next shows, Cody, do you remember what our next shows are? I think in January we're doing, is it soups? Do you remember what we're doing?
Let's see. Yeah, we're doing soups in January, and then February, I think we're doing like heart healthy. Yep. Right?
Yep. And I put a call out for the cooks for March and April. We're already thinking about March and April. So, so that's a good comment, Eileen. And Eileen asked how to make date sugar. I don't know. Does anybody, any of the kids or cooks in the kitchen, or Brenda, does anybody know how to make date sugar? I know something I do is I sometimes throw dates in if I want to sweeten something in my blender, but I don't know how to make date sugar.
I've never made date sugar, but I make date paste all the time. And so I often have a jar of date paste in my refrigerator. And so the date paste, you just, you mix dates with some water in the Vitamix, and that's it. And, depending on how thick you want your date paste, I think I'm trying to remember what I use, if it's sort of 1-to-1 dates to water, a little bit more water. But I think the way that date sugar would be made is by dehydrating dates to the point that they're hard. And so you would have to, dehydrate them completely and then put them in a food processor to turn them into sugar. But I've never done that myself. It's just a guess.
Great. Let's do our draw for the second book. Ella has the list. It'd be nice to have Ava and Ella pick, or maybe Anu, but since the list is with Ella. So let's go ahead and close Mia's eyes. And
Get your hand out.
and by the way, another cook in the kitchen, Carolyn Strickland, is watching, and she has said date sugar, dehydrate dates in a dehydrator or bake until very dry, add to dry goods blender. So often, like if you have a Vitamix, they have a special blade for dry goods. So Mia, pick a name and let's see who's the second winner.
All right. And she stopped at Colleen Ann.
So we were supposed to cross her out because she won the first book. Helene, you're very lucky. Helene, by the way, runs all these veg fests. So I'm always happy when she wins prizes because she in turn gives away a lot of prizes.
No, I think we have two names. We have a Helen and a Pauline.
Okay, so is there a Helen? So if there's a Helen who's watching, please put your comment down.
Yeah.
We think that's Miss Helene. So is there a Helen in the house? There's a Pauline.
Yeah, that's what she said. That's what she said.
Yes, so Pauline won this time.
Okay, so Pauline, can you send in chat your contact, or if you want to be more private, send us a message on So Many Cooks, or you can email me. And I'll put the chat here. My email is Dilip, my name Dilip, at trianglevegsociety.org. And who was the winner? Pauline, what's her last name?
It was Pauline Ann. Let me look through the names again. I'll get that information as soon as I find it there.
Are you sure it's Paula Proctor, maybe? We have a Paula Proctor.
Yes, I know we have that, but no, I'm pretty sure it was Pauline. I'm gonna look up. We can keep going and I'll get that info.
Okay, so
I'll let you know.
We will give it to, if there's a Pauline in the house, or to Paula. So Paula, go ahead also and send us your contact, And if Pauline is not there and can't respond to us, we'll send it to Paula. So either Pauline or Paula. How's that sound, Ella?
Good.
Okay, so I put a comment in the chat, either Pauline or Paula, let us know and we'll get you the book. And then I have one last question for you, Anu, and then we'll go around and have the kids. I think the kids have been anxious to ask questions of Miss Brenda. So Anu, there was a question that came in about how do you keep from burning the oats? Dawn Gwinnett asked, how do you not burn the oats? Oh, and a question for anybody, any of the kids, what's better, oat or whole wheat flour? But first you, Anu, how do you keep from oats from burning?
I actually like to burn my oats a little bit because when you put applesauce on top of them, then they become soggy and more like oatmeal. So if you burn your oats, then it won't become soggy quickly. Well, not burn, but like char it a bit. Some of the bottom ones char. But if you don't want to burn it, just mix it every 30 seconds. And yeah, it won't burn. But I like it burnt.
Yeah, we both like oats that are a little bit warmer, and we get some, it brings the flavor out more before you add liquid. We typically, when we make oatmeal in the morning, we'll first warm the oats and then we'll add soy milk. We make our own soy milk, or we'll add oat milk or rice milk or almond milk, something like that. Would any of the kids in the kitchen like to answer the question about flour? So could you use what's the difference between whole wheat flour and what was the other flour?
Oat flour.
Oat flour. So for people who are gluten-free, that would be important. Ava and Ella, your dad is gluten-free. Do you have any comments? What do you guys do when you make baked goods and you don't want to use wheat?
We just use a gluten-free flour. There's actually a variety of gluten-free flours you can use. We just use an all-purpose baking flour blend for gluten-free.
So yeah, that has like a combination, different types of gluten-free flours. We do also use oat flour a lot, and we actually make it ourselves. We just buy the old-fashioned oats and then we food process them into a flour, and then we always have that on hand, and those work really great for pancakes, of course. I know Ella and her kids did that demonstration a while back, those pancakes, and they're delicious. We make those often. But yeah, that's probably our favorite one, is the oat flour, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just a final comment about the book. Paula Proctor was the winner. And Paula, if you're on, we need your contact. So just put a thumbs up or hello, I'm here. And we'll give you a couple minutes. And if you're not there, I think we should probably give it to somebody else who is here. So we'll give you a minute. So just let us know that in chat that I'm here, and then either email me after. Oh yeah, Paula's here. So Paula, go ahead. You have my email. So please email me your contact, your address. Don't put it in chat, but send it to me and I'll forward it on to Brenda, and she'll be delighted to send you a copy of the book. And Brenda, I'll get you Helene Ann's address. She's here in North Carolina, and I think you might have met her. So let's, we could go on for quite a while, but I know the kids are anxious to probably eat their, I know Anu's been eating her dish, and we are going to look forward to having Brenda back in a few months for the Great American Meetout in March. But before we wrap up, let's have each of the kids in the kitchen have your favorite question for Miss Brenda, starting with Omaha. Ava and Ella, what questions have you thought of that you'd love for Miss Brenda to answer?
What's your favorite food?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. My favorite food is blueberries. Blueberries have been my favorite food from the time I was a little girl. So it's never changed, but that's my very favorite food is blueberries.
Great. And then Ella, what was, I can't remember, was Ava or Ella who asked? I think it was Ella. So Ava, what's your favorite? What's your question?
How many kids do you have? I know from your book that you had a son, but do you have any other kids, and how old are they?
Thanks for asking. I have a my daughter's turning 36 on Monday, and my son is 33. And my daughter has 2 children who are 4 and 1 year of age. So I have 2 grandchildren, which is really nice.
Great, great. And then let's go to Anu. What question do you have for Miss Brenda? We've been lucky. We've got to spend a lot of time with Miss Brenda. How many times have you met Miss Brenda? At least 3-4 times, right? So what question do you have of Miss Brenda?
What's your favorite topic of nutrition?
Wow, that's a really good question. I guess my favorite topic in nutrition is how to put together plant-based diets that are the most nutritious that you could possibly find, that help people to not just prevent getting sick from things like diabetes, but that can actually help them reverse those diseases. And so I really love, some people call it lifestyle medicine. I really love that.
Great. I have to give a pitch, by the way, luckily I was involved with a film called Code Blue, and I want to encourage people to check it out, codebluedoc.com. Saray Stancic, whose brainchild it is, and who's the main person in the film, she's working on a book. She has a book, and it's coming out, I think, in 20 days. So codebluedoc.com. And maybe in Cooks in the Kitchen or Kids in the Kitchen, we should give away some copies of the DVD. I'm really, it's been a great, I've really been privileged to be part of that effort. So lifestyle medicine is really important. And finally, Mia and Max, let's see if you guys have specific questions for Miss Brenda. What do you have that she can answer?
I have 2 questions. One of my questions is, what advice do you have for kids who want to go vegan?
Well, I think it depends on whether your parents are vegan or not. Because if your parents aren't vegan and they are really scared about you going vegan, then you need to really show them how responsible you are about your food choices. So for them to feel comfortable with you going in that kind of direction. And so if you need to read books and you need to get educated, and maybe even say to your mom and dad, maybe we could see a dietitian together to help me figure out exactly, what I need to do. But generally what you want to do is to eat whole, healthy plant foods like beans and whole grains and fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. And that will help you to be as healthy as possible. If your parents are already vegan, well, lucky you, they will help you through it.
And I have one more question.
Sure.
If you were going somewhere but you needed to have lunch, what would be your little food that you would just make quickly and go?
Well, that's a really good question too, because a lot of kids have to have these bagged lunches almost every day for school. And so it's kind of fun to have different things in your lunch bucket. But some people don't want to look different than the rest of the kids at school. They want to fit in. So it's kind of fun to make different kinds of sandwiches. In our book, Nourish, we have a recipe for a kind of a chickpea tuna. It's kind of like, kids wouldn't even know it's not. It looks like it, and it can make a really lovely sandwich. And you can also do different flavored tofus in your sandwiches and all sorts of things. And the other thing is the roll-ups. I love roll-ups. So you can buy the either the pita bread or the tortillas, and you can, put your hummus and lots of veggies and roll them up. And kids love that too. And the other thing my kids always loved was sushi. So vegan sushi, they love that for lunch. So that was a fun thing too. And then the other thing you can do, and we did this a lot, is we would make full meal salads. So like my children always loved pasta. So we would do a pasta salad with some beans in it and different vegetables. And that was always a fun thing to bring for lunch.
Great. And Max, did you have a question for Miss Brenda?
Yeah.
What's your favorite way of exercising?
Oh, thanks for asking that. My very favorite is to be outside. So I love rollerblading and biking and running and canoeing and hiking. I love skating and skiing, cross country skiing, downhill skiing. I love it all. But I have to be honest, not every day I can get out to do those things. So when I can't, I do exercise classes at the gym. Now the gyms are closed because of COVID. So I do the online classes and whatever I can do. But the one thing I do is I exercise every day. And now I'm in my 60s. I can still do everything I could do when I was a teenager. I can still do handstands and cartwheels and everything. And the trick is never stop doing it. Just keep doing it and your body will know how to do it, even when you get old like me.
You're not old, Brenda. And I'm sorry, my wife's reminding me, Mia, you did ask your 2 questions, right? Okay.
And also about skating, our driveway used to be frozen, so we would go and we would skate down. We would like slide and skate like down the driveway.
That's a great plan. I love it. I wish I could come to your driveway and skate with you.
Well, we thank everybody for joining us. We have so much content. We could go on much longer, but I think we'll bring it to a close for now. Please stay in touch with us. So Many Cooks in the Kitchen on Facebook, our webpage, somanycooks.com. If you think of questions later on, then here's a question that just came through. Kathy Hendricks, I just love watching all the kids. Great kids. I would adopt them all. I'm so proud of Ava and Ella since I'm their grandma. It has just been great watching Cody. COVID has pretty much ruined our visits, so these Zoom visits have been wonderful. So thanks, Grandma Kathy. I'm sure your kids are very appreciative that you're here, and we're appreciative of everybody who joined. I know we'll have many more people watching it after the fact, and this show will be published on Plant-Based Network as well. So, so tell your friends, So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. Our next shows are January 16th. We only cook every other month. The cooks cook every month. So January 16th, Genesis Butler. The kids are going to be asking her questions about her activism. She's 14 years old and she gave a TED Talk when she was 10, which is amazing. And then in February, we're cooking winter foods. We haven't announced that yet. So we're cooking winter foods. So whatever you kids want, soups or whatever keeps you warm. And then in March, we have Brenda again. And that will be really, Brenda will have time to talk at much more length and the kids will be asking her questions. It'll be a conversation. And then in terms of Cooks in the Kitchen, our next shows are, I think it's the second week in January. I can't remember, but in January, we're doing soups. In February, we're doing heart healthy foods, and we're planning March and April. We don't have those scheduled yet. So great comment from Liliana Cruz Vajillo. I'm so glad these kids are being encouraged at such an early age, such fun to watch them. I tell you, I work in the schools with K through 4, and just exposing them to this it's just been so rewarding for me. So we thank you, Liliana. We thank all of our viewers, and a round of applause for all the kids. You guys, Anu, Max, Mia, Ava, Ella, and Ava and Ella were helped too by their little sister, Nora. So she's off camera, but she's also a helper. So thanks to Nora as well. And with that, we thank you all. Look forward to seeing you in the new year. Happy New Year, and be well.
Bye.
Bye.